So how do we choose the correct formula to make sure that what we're scanning will see the correct height and the correct distance in the X and Y direction? So first we have to make a note, are we scanning on the upper scanner or the lower scanner? Some systems have a possibility to have an upper scanner. So we have to, some systems have a low voltage adapter, or on the DT controller a selector. So we have to look at the selector and make sure we selected it correctly. Now let's say we selected to use the lower scanner, also in the Z direction and also in the XY direction. So in the software we have to make sure also that the divider which we set on the high voltage piezo driver which is the one which controls, let's say, the lower scanner, is the same on the software. So for example, if on the high voltage piezo driver the Z divider is set to 1:7, we have to make sure that also on the software it's set to 1:7. Now what is this Z divider? The full range is 1:1. That means, let's say for example, the full range of the lower scanner is 70 microns. So it can move in the Z direction 70 microns up and down. Now, why would we want to set it to 1:7? By setting it to 1:7, we're cutting down the range by a factor of 7, but also we're cutting down the noise. So if we don't have such big features, it's better to work with a lower range, because this way also we have less noise. For example, if we're going to scan HOPG, so we would rather choose a range of 1 to 15. So we have to look at what we set in the high voltage piezo driver. Now let's say we chose there 1 to 7. So we have to make sure also here that we have 1 to 7. Now you can also do an automatic update. Here we're going to choose, let's say, lower scanner, because we're using the lower scanner. And by pressing approach, so this should update automatically. Now, some versions don't have 1 to 15, but they have 1 to 23. So you can choose your 1 to 23. Got stuck because of automatic update. Okay, and we're going to choose 1 to 23, and here we also have the possibility of 1 to 23. But let's go to the more newer systems that have 1 to 15. So here we can choose 1 to 15, or let's say as a default, a regular scan, you just choose 1 to 7. Now the XY, just leave it 1 to 1, also on the high voltage piezo driver and also in the software. Don't play with it. Now the next step, after we set the Z divider correctly, is to choose the calibration coefficient. Now the calibration coefficient is the calibration for the Z direction. Now it's better if you did a change, let's say from the upper to lower, or you're not sure, is to refresh this. So you first choose a different file, then choose the file which is the correct one for your scanner that you're going to use. And here this is the value for the Z axis. Then you have to know, are you going to scan in the X direction or the Y direction? Let's say we're going to scan, our fast axis is going to be in the X direction. So we choose here the scan direction, and then we have to choose the formula. So here it's also important to refresh it after we chose the Z direction. So first you choose the Z direction, then only you choose the formula for the X or Y direction. So let's refresh it, and then again choose it. So again, first we choose the Z direction, we're going to refresh it. After we choose the Z direction, then we have to refresh the X direction. So we're going to choose a different one and the correct X direction. Okay, now changing this formula won't affect this direction. That means, for example, if I choose here Y, it won't change this scan direction to Y. So these are independent, and you have to make sure that you choose both of them, that they both make sense. So for example, if I chose here Y, so I have to change this to the Y direction. And if I change it to X, it's not going to change the formula here to X, so I have to change this back to X. So after we chose first the calibration coefficient, then we refreshed this formula to the correct one. Then in the scopes, we have to make sure that the processing is calculated. Okay, not the raw data, but the calculated. This you don't have to worry about. Then when everything is set, only then you press scan.